Bob Young personifies commitment to community from his leadership of Boy Scout Troop 1910, where his son achieved the rank of Eagle Scout, his training and work as a mediator, designation as a fellow in the American College of Trust and Estate Council, and to his more than 30 years as an estates and trust attorney. Bob has made an immeasurable impact on the lives of his clients and the Baltimore region. He is a member of the American, Florida, and Maryland State Bar Associations, with many writing, teaching, and speaking credits to his name, and is listed in Best Lawyers in America. Bob's consistent focus on service and philanthropy through his work and volunteer activities in many organizations continues to inspire. Thank you, Bob.
I want to echo most of what Christina said about the Baltimore Community Foundation and the ability that they have to work with clients who want to do charitable giving. But I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank the people that sort of have contributed to my life at getting to this point in my career. And some of you know parts of this story because you've been a part of it. But the word that came to mind when I thought about this was serendipity, which the Oxford English Dictionary defines as an occurrence or development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way. And that's happened a lot in my life. I didn't start out as a young child thinking I was going to be a lawyer. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York. In central New York, I was corrected recently that upstate is the Adirondacks and that sort of thing. Central New York is where I grew up. And I thought it a great achievement that my parents would let me go far enough from home to come down here to Hopkins. And that's how I ended up in Maryland. After college, I just thought you walked out and you got a job somewhere, and that's not really the way it works. So I did some very interesting things before I ended up becoming a lawyer. I actually worked for an art dealer for a while out in Hunt Valley, and that was very interesting, and it served me well later on in life when you deal with clients that have art collections and other kinds of things. I had some assistance from a fellow lawyer at the time in terms of my housing. I'm good friends with a bankruptcy lawyer that maybe some of you know, Steve Fruin, and he has some real estate in Maryland, and he was kind enough to let me rent one of his apartments at a discounted rate, so I want to give him credit. And eventually I decided, well, maybe I'll try this law thing, and I decided I would go to law school at night so that I could look around and try to figure out what I wanted to do when I got out of law school. And that worked out pretty well because after first semester of freshman year in first year of law school, I got a note in my mailbox from what back then you would call Piper and Marbury. We're in their wonderful headquarters today. But at that time, this was an invitation from the folks in the Estate Trust Department to come and interview. And what they had done as a practice of hiring young law students who were going to law school at night to come work as a legal assistant. And it turned out to be the Estate and Trust Department. And so thank you to Stan Kleinfelter, who is one of your inductees here, and Sam Welschlager and good people at Piper and Marbury back in that day who hired me and began to teach me over the years about administering estates and doing estate planning and setting a fairly strong bedrock foundation for doing that. In addition to those folks, I want to thank a young, not so young woman anymore, who just retired from our firm, but who I have worked with on and off, and some of you may have had contact with over the years, Ann Hesselbacher. When I came to Piper and Marbury when I was in law school, Ann was the person they assigned me to as a legal assistant to show me the basic elements of administering the estate. And I told her that as she retired from our firm, that I probably wouldn't know half what I know today if it were not for her and her early teachings, because she was somebody who really went by the book. And I also met some other folks in that period of time, Rich DeMay, who some of you may have experienced over at Brown Advisory, and Kristen Lambros, who is one of your inductees, and Charlotte Sherman. Charlotte Sherman was actually leaving Piper and Marbury when I got there and went over to First National Bank, where she was essentially in charge of the trust division there. Eventually, I wandered over across the street. We're talking about the old Piper and Marbury downtown. I wandered across the street and ended up working for Charlotte for a while. And then I came back across the street, across Charles Street, and ended up working for a while at a firm that's now known as Shapiro Share, where I got kind of another experience in my life, working with Ron Shapiro, Bill Carlson, John Baum, Lonnie Ritzer, Ann Gordon, a great group of people, and I was the estate planning lawyer there. And then I got a phone call from Rich DeMay, who I had known from years past, and he was at that time at a firm, Stewart Plan in Blumenthal. And Rich said, well, would you be interested in coming over and talking to us about, coming and joining the firm? And I said, yeah, okay. And so I made arrangements to go over. And he said, oh, by the way, I'm leaving. And I said, what do you mean you're leaving? And he said, I'm going over to Brown Advisory, and which he did. And I believe he's now retired. Somebody can verify that for me. And I ended up going to Stewart Plant in Blumenthal, where I got the opportunity to work with some just top-notch estate planning attorneys. I think many of you may know the reputation that Van Stewart and Mac Plant and Mickey Blumenthal had when they started the firm. And in addition, we brought Charlotte Sherman over from First National, M&T now, and a great crew of other partners, David Chavez, and I told you about Ann Hasselbacher and John Lastly, and Mickey is still practicing. Van unfortunately passed away a few years ago, and Mac retired. Mac is living the high life. And so that's what brings me here today, and I was talking a little bit with Christina at the table. One of the reasons that I enjoy doing estate planning and estate administration is you get to work with people. Yes, there are technicalities. Yes, there are contracts. Sometimes there are disputes. But at the bottom of it, you're helping people plan for what they're going to do, whether their estate is large or small. You are going to help them with charitable giving if they're going to do charitable giving. You're going to help them in their real time of need when someone passes away and you have to administer the estate. And it has that aspect of personal contact and relationship with individuals that I'm not saying it doesn't occur otherwise in the law, but I've always found it satisfying. And one of the reasons I continue to do estate planning and estate administration and related planning. And thank you again for this honor.